We get into this episode where we find that Truman has actually held back on what he could have actually said in his expose in the Esquire. And we are introduced to a very spicy new character who I would venture to say that I would have loved as a life coach, James Baldwin. Let's get into it. All right. When we begin this episode, we kind of do a time jump backwards to the reaction that Bill and Babe have to Truman putting out the Esquire. So they're kind of talking about how everything went down. Babe and her husband are kind of having this exchange. And Bill pretty much tells Truman he can go F off. And Truman tries to commit suicide. And that kind of sets the tone for this entire episode.
Yeah. I guess I didn't think that Truman Capote would have been that weak. And I guess we can't minimize suicide. Yeah. However, he had to have known what would have happened, or what could have happened. You have to play all the angles. To say that he was as smart as he was, he should have known that there could have been some repercussions.
And the other thing too is that, and this is the trouble that I had, like, this is another one of those shows I might have to go back and actually read about the history of their relationships and stuff, because it brings up a lot of questions. Like, one being, like you said, Jermaine, he had to have known the repercussions of writing this piece. Why was he surprised, right? What did he expect to happen? And it almost feels like he turns into this whole, even after he initially wrote the piece and it published and stuff, it's almost like he's turning back on the Swans, like, and woe is me. You guys are abandoning me. You're neglecting me. You're doing all this to me. When you basically just kind of put their lives, as we say, on Front Street, right? And told all their dirty business. And then you're surprised when you're being ostracized by the Swans. It's like what world are you living in? I don't understand.
Well, in this episode, to Truman's point, he's like, hey, wait a minute. I didn't even expose everything that I could have exposed. I was actually not trying to come after the women, but I was rather trying to come for the men with how they handle things. And I think part of how he was tormenting himself, like, wait, I really didn't intend to tear down my friendships or tear apart my friends. I was trying to come for the husbands. And the wives were kind of hitting the backlash, but wait a minute. I didn't even expose them because I got a lot on them. And this came out in episode 5. It was very messy.
But do you think that that's realistic though? And let's just suspend the fact that we're watching the show, but like just thinking about it in real life terms, because this did actually happen. Like, do we really think that he was that naive to not understand and know why he was receiving the backlash and stuff that he did? I mean, because after this, he kind of faded, I believe, from.
I think he had manipulated the women so much that he felt like he could have, got them back on his side.
That's it.
Yes. And if we're being honest, just at face value, I am an extension of my husband. My husband is an extension of me. So you cannot come after my husband without me getting hit in the backlash. So in the real world, it's still gonna be, boy, don't play with me. Don't play with my family. I told you these things in confidence, but
even if what you're saying is right.
100%. 100%. Yes. In real life, no, you're wrong. No matter how you slice it.
We've got questions and we know you have answers, so make love to our senses in the comments. Drop them down below.
So yes, he attempts suicide. And he gets this call from Jimmy Baldwin, our activist, our writer, our very brave for his time, homosexual person. And I'm in love with him. That's my life coach.
There was just something that I wanted to say. So his particular, so I've seen him on clips before, but this particular actor seems to have like a Sidney Poitier type style to his speech or whatever, which kind of threw me off because he made me want to like what you gotta say, like, you know what I'm saying? Like it was two different things going on. It was like, I'm thinking about this man, but I'm hearing Sidney Poitier. I don't know.
Yeah, that's because Baldwin was not that. James Baldwin's speech pattern was not that. It was not.
But people heard him. He was able to move people. He was a dynamic person of his time. Right. So this actor, and please forgive me for not being able to say his name at the moment, but stellar performance. Mm-hmm. I'm watching it. I'm feeling like, okay, you're the real James Baldwin. Hey, you got everything figured out. You're a life coach. You're a therapist. You're a friend. You are a Frenchman. You're all of these things.
But he also had an agenda. He had a very clear agenda. And he wasn't hiding from the fact that he had an agenda. And of course, in my view, Capote took from it what he needed in that moment. And it seemed like he was like pushing. He meaning Baldwin was pushing him down a particular path, but Capote took from it what he needed in that moment.
Well, Baldwin was a little more than surface level with Truman. Like, okay, yes, Truman, and I don't want to kind of jump too far ahead. Like, okay, everybody has their community or whatever. I'm going to be your community. We have the blacks, we have the Jews, we have all of these things, but who's really speaking up for the homosexuals? So guess what? I'm going to be your community. I'm going to be your voice. There's that. On top of the fact, James slides in there like, okay. Well, actually, I think Truman brings it up with the fact that you're a black man, I'm a white man or what have you, or these are white women. No one's really addressing these issues. There's a subtle racism about these people. They want to pretend like these things aren't happening, but they really are. So I want to cut through to the chase and say, hey, these things are actually happening. you don't really care about this particular group of people, and I want to expose it. There is definitely a subtle racism there, and let's get into it.
And the thing is, I don't think Capote was really ready for that. He wasn't ready to really tackle the real issues. He wanted to deal with everything on the surface level: the money, the fame, the this, the that. He wanted to deal with the Camelot, JFK-esque type mythology of Hollywood and all the things that surrounded these types of individuals, right? He didn't want to deal with the real day-to-day lives of the people that are outside of that particular microcosm of people. So,
and he was very, very, very willing to discuss it. He was aware of it. He was very aware of it. Like, hey, you got the blacks that are the servants, you got the homosexuals for entertainment, and the women to look at. So he's very aware of the kind of hierarchical arrangement. But as far as him willing to write about it, no. So I agree with you. But we're gonna get into one of our video clips. James has a way about just making you know what? I don't have a pilot's license, but because Jimmy said that I could fly a plane, I'm gonna do that today. I'm gonna do it. He has a way about just making people move to action or be able to hear him out. So I feel like I love this fever dream that Truman is having because he's able to just let it flow. He's able to just hear James out. It's just a real thing that is happening. I think it's just so beautiful. Like, oh my goodness. It's like,
I could really listen to him read the phone book and just.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's like MCI. Is that you? It's a little bit of my age. But oh my goodness. But hey.
MCI is a now defunct.
But either way, like, hey, like we were talking about earlier, everyone has their community. I'm going to be your community representative today. I got you. So I love the fact that they have this whole exchange, but while they're having this lunch and all of these things, Truman actually gets into the secret inner lives of Swans. So what he didn't publish, he actually discusses with Baldwin in this episode. And whereas I personally felt some type of way, specifically for Babe, I was less empathetic and sympathetic to her after watching this episode. I loved this episode so much. And I appreciated the fact that Truman really got into it with Baldwin about the different things that the Swans were into. I'm like, oh my goodness, okay. Thank you. Because now I feel like, you know what? It wasn't that bad.
Really, we're not rooting for none of them. And
no!
I kind of think, and that's the surprising part is that, you started this show off and you're so angry. I mean, angry maybe too strong word, but you're kind of like, I can't believe that, he made money off of his friends' misfortunes. But then, and you start to feel sorry for Babe and all the others. And then when it gets to this point, it's kind of like, it seems as though it's like, oh, well,
Well, we're talking about it. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. The unmitigated gall. The unmitigated gall. I mean, this
as an Hermes pirate.
Yeah, at the beginning of this series, we're left to believe that she's the doting wife. She might have had her issues, especially with her kids or whatever. But I was left to believe that she was faithful the entire time. And then, boom, the shoe drops.
And Truman is helping her pick out the outfits to go and basically screw other men. Okay.
But here's this double-edged sword, though, with Truman, though, right? He knows all this stuff, and he's like, "Oh, I'm trying to talk about the men." But it's still hypocritical because you're trying to talk about the men, but even so, the women are doing even more, if not the same, that the men are doing. So you're not really trying to make a real stance. It goes back to say you're really just trying to make some money off of it.
So it left me wondering whether men cheat as much as women or women cheat as much as men. It left me thinking that women cheat just as much as men, and they just get away with it more.
It's the chicken or the egg
Right.
argument. We could go round for round and still have the same debate 36 years from now.
Right.
So, but hey, like you said, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Like everybody's screwing everybody, and it just seems like the women get away with it better.
The other thing too, though, is that the fact that they have money and that they're able to do so much more and go so much faster, so much farther because of that money, and able to kind of do some of the things that most people cannot do in order to indulge themselves. Right? It's all of that too.
And something else that Truman said, he specifically said, it's the fact that they are who they are. They're kind of leading society, and they have the gall to talk down about other people who are found out when they are doing the exact same thing. Like, who does? Well, I'm not gonna say who does that, but that is hypocritical to its highest level.
I mean, are we surprised though? No,
I'm gonna say that I was a bit surprised. I was a bit surprised that that people could be such hypocrites. Like, if I'm doing the same thing, I'm not gonna talk about you. If I know I'm doing the exact same thing, if you whoring in the street and I am too, I ain't talking about you. Hey, do what you gotta do. Have fun. Have fun doing it. That's my thing.
Look, I have absolutely nothing to say. Nothing.
Not a word.
But I loved how he got into not just their relationships with the men or their husbands, but with their family, with their children. He said that they were all horrible mothers, not just, oh, they weren't that great. No, they were horrible mothers. I was like, oh my goodness. Even Babe, like she was one of the worst. Like she was so obsessed with the idea of perfection. She didn't know how to be a mother. She absolutely did not. So when they kind of showed one of the scenes with her at the party of her daughter, she's like, hey, get this buffoon out of my house. He's a clown. His job is to be a buffoon. Like, what are you even talking about? What are we talking about here? And she's so drunk. She like falls in the tub and it was just all kinds of craziness. It's like, you don't know how to be a mother. And then, was it CZ or Slim? I don't know. Either one of them that just didn't have any remorse behind their child being with a nanny most of the time. Like, okay, well, I go fox hunting with them, so clearly that's enough. It's like, whoa, like they're horrible mothers. And they also treated people savagely, like Ann Woodard. They showed that whole, oh my God, they showed the whole scene with her where they just kind of outcast her and were extremely rude to her. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I would have set it off in a fast.
Do we ever find out if the allegations were true or was she just a victim? And I kind of feel like maybe she was just a victim. That's what I feel like in the back of my head. I don't really know.
Okay, so I did a quick search on the internet, Google. So if I'm wrong, I'm going to blame Google. But Google said that eventually it was her son that was convicted of killing the father and not her.
Oh, so that just adds a whole other layer, right? So another victim of Truman, basically.
So and they were absolutely horrible to that woman.
Horrible. So who do we like in the beginning of the show? Started when we first started watching it, and then did it suddenly change once we got to this point? Like
Babe. Yeah. For me, it was Babe. Like I'm like, okay, that girl. Okay, she's dressed to the nines. She's a classy woman. She's just poor thing. She's going through it. Her husband is busting down one of the most unattractive women on earth, and all of these horrible things are happening to her. And I feel so bad.
In a house, watch you go.
Huh?
In a house, watch you go.
In a house on the sheets. Like it was disgusting. And then like, Babe, you dirty scoundrel.
So for me, my favorite character was actually Truman. And let me explain why. He was my favorite character because he was just so funny to me. Everything he did was just hilarious. And then as the episode went on, he started to really, truly remind me of Catty Gay Boys, who I cannot stand.
Yes. Exact same thing. I was going to say the exact same thing. That is it. Truman, I was like, oh, I guess there was this mystique that I had. And I know this is fiction, but I mean, there's some basis in reality. But for me, as it relates to the show, it was Truman. But the more I saw his interactions with people and how he dealt with his relationship with women and all the other kind of stuff, I just was like, ugh. And it's the exact same thing that I thought. He reminds me of the queens that do too much coke, that party too much, and always have something to say about everybody, everything, even while their whole world is burning down around them, right? It gives me that exact same vibe.
Yeah, no doubt. Hell yeah.
Like I said, it was Babe for me. I felt like the child finding out that Santa Claus isn't real. It was very hurtful to just find out how absolutely disgusting Babe was, just like the rest of the people in her community. It's like, okay, you don't care about people. You just are consumed with your own little world, and that's it. That is absolutely it. But I love, one thing that I did love in this episode was Baldwin expressing how he felt, well, not expressing how he felt, but his random swan facts. And I feel like we had a clip about that. He was talking about the swans, how they devour each other. Do we have the clip? Still acting again. I love to see him. I just love to see it. But the way he puts those swan facts out there, it's like, is that not so relevant? You have Babe on this pedestal, and she is supposed to be the best of the best, but even she ain't worth a dime in Chinese money.
So for me, and this goes back to something that I said earlier. It was, to me, Baldwin's character, this particular character, was specifically talking about race. And Truman was then able to say, okay, yes, I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to relate this to me. I think what Baldwin's character was trying to elucidate was the fact that, hey, you can reframe all of this from a prism of race. But Truman was just like, nah, I'm going to take what you said, Elliot. Nah, I'm going to make this specific to these women. It's about money. It's about fame. It's about this power that you have. And it's just amazing how two people can look at the same set of facts and arrive at a different conclusion.
Yeah.
100%. He even and I want to say it was within the same scene that he even says, like, Truman, like, well, hey, maybe I'm guilty of the same. Maybe I'm a racist, because Baldwin says basically you can connect everything back to race. And again, just remembering who Baldwin is. He's an activist. He's a writer, civil rights activist anyway. So you can connect everything back to race. And Truman was like, well, maybe I'm a racist. And Baldwin's like, yeah, You are, because how could you not be being white and being in America? This is just how it is. But the gag is, what do you do to change it? What do you do to make it better? So Baldwin has a very clear agenda about why he's there, and the seeds he's kind of trying to plant into Truman's head about, with all the information you have, everything that you've seen, how can we make things better?
Yeah.
I just don't think that Truman was. I agree that Truman's trying to frame it to what he is going through, but I don't think Truman would have really made that point because he was also benefiting from the system as it is. So why would he try to really,
Well, and there's a clear axiom there, though, because you have racism and you have classism, right? Truman ain't got no damn money. He don't come from money. He don't. So for him,
that's all the show.
Right, there's that. There's clearly some classism, some elitism there as well. So he's not thinking about the lens of race, but for him, there's the classism, the elitism. But I think we have another clip where we have Truman, because they go on for some time. They end up going to a museum outside of them being at the Coat Box, and he wants to go back to, or Truman wants him to come back with him for like a nightcap, basically. But in that time, I love how Truman's like, hey, why did we never date? And I thought that was so funny. And Baldwin was like, because we would have murdered each other. Yes, you can't have two flowers and no garden. Like, that was so funny to me. Like,
it's two women.
Two pretty girls. Like, what we gonna do?
Two girls.
What we gonna do? What we gonna do with each other? But
you got to cut this out, but I'm gonna say it anyway. They're gonna bump through it.
But you know what? So you know what I found out? Penetrative sex between men is a relatively new thing. It wasn't something that had always been happening.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to see the receipts. I want to see the footage.
I need to see the receipts. You mean to tell people was out here just being sad?
No. So there was fellatio. But other forms of penetration, no.
Where you read it?
Okay, well, I'll find the information out.
Yes. Oh my, good to know. I love these random facts. But in this episode,
that
kind of
that takes me to a whole different train of thought. I have so many questions now, so that needs to get there.
Toward the end of the episode, Truman and Baldwin have a nightcap at Truman's place. But what happens is Truman wants to continue to drink, and Baldwin is in a completely different frame of mind. Do we have a video clip? He is the world's best life coach, and I'm gonna stand on it. He is getting Truman together like, hey, you're abusing alcohol. You have this disease of alcohol abuse, and it's basically threatening the essence of who you are. He goes on to say like, hey, look, you have a light in you, which it wasn't in that clip. He calls it a faint motherfucking glow, like one word. But you still have light. So you have a responsibility to yourself, to your community, to produce. And you're not doing that. And this alcohol is basically contaminating what it is that you have a responsibility to. So basically, get it together, produce what you need to produce, and get out of your own way.
Yeah, stop dimming your light. Yes. Let it shine for the world to see.
Yes. And he does it. He says it very eloquently. Way better than I would have. But I appreciate it. And I'm like, dang, when can I book him for a session? Because
it really spoke to me, like really honestly, like that scene. So many of his scenes spoke to me as an individual. But that one right there, it was just like, get off your ass and do something.
Yes.
And do you think part of it is because we're seeing the actor play the role, but we're also in our mind thinking about who Baldwin was as a revolutionary and how important he is to the Black gay community and the Black community as a whole. And so we're taking it, we're internalizing it, right? And we're saying, okay, this applies to me now. This applies to us now.
And so that's just good writing.
Yeah, and good writing.
That's good writing and great acting. Because it should, in a sense, move you and get you to thinking deeper than what's in the very short moment of what's on film. So that, for me, that's great writing. That's great acting. It evokes emotion and deeper thought. So shout out to this actor because, oh my goodness, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not living right. I need to get it together. I need to stop dimming my light. Okay, I'm going to set the world ablaze. So it was really, really, really good stuff for me. But in the end, we find that Truman is basically, and I don't want to say fever dream, I'm going to say fever dream because it's just like the way fever dream sounds. He is actually not awake for all of this that's happening, for all the amazing things that's happened with James Baldwin. He's actually in a dream state. So we find that Truman has actually been asleep this entire time from the point that he received the phone call. Well, actually, I think he was the one that initiated the phone call to Bill and Babe's place, to where they basically, Bill tells him to go and kill himself, and he does try with the pills. So beyond that point, he's actually in a dream state for the entire episode.
Yeah. For me, like I was telling you all earlier, it took me watching this 3 times to realize that, this was all happening in his mind as he was asleep. And it was really only because that those two scenes, the scene at the beginning of the episode and the scene at the end of the episode, it was basically the same scene. He did things differently. And I don't even know why I didn't pick up on that the first time that I saw it. Probably 9 times out of 10 I was walking around, which is why I don't pick up on things, because I'm walking around. But anyway, I thought it was so appropriate that James Baldwin, the character of James Baldwin, was the person that spoke to him. Out of all the people in his life, he said it himself. Why are you doing this for me? We're friends, but we're not friends. So why you? So that spoke to the person of Truman Capote, that he would find someone who was as great, if not greater than him, to be the person to set him on a different path.
Yes. For me, it's tied in a nice little bow. Again, I'm going to keep saying it. Baldwin, the life coach, who wouldn't want that as a voice of reason for them? So how appropriate, how absolutely appropriate. Although, no, we aren't of the same complexion. However, we are in this very small community. So we understand each other on that front. So I speak your language in that way, and I can reach you because I'm just as intelligent and aware of all of these things. And in essence, we are the same. We are still a minority. So I can reach you.
Now, whether or not he reaches him, that's for another show.
Amen.
He did have a number of issues with Truman. But to something that Elliot said earlier, I think the biggest issue that he had with Truman was the fact that Truman was wasting. He was dimming his light because of the alcohol or alcohol / drugs. And if he could stop those things, he would have had more life, more stories to give and to tell. And it was almost as if Truman knew it, but he just could not stop himself.
Right.
In the closure of the Secret Inner Life of Swans, it closes out with Truman having a feast of one with his own personal Chef Boyardee. And he is feasting on Swan. For me, I'm like, oh my, what are you about to do to these post-Swans, quote unquote, in this next episode? Right. When you have decided that I am going to feast on Swan. They aren't as docile as they seem. They aren't just these beautiful little creatures. They are quite dangerous indeed. And as opposed to being a prey, I am going to be a predator.
I mean, he always was a predator, though, dude.
He didn't think so. He didn't think so.
No, he didn't think so.
Well, for me, it was. I guess it wasn't so much what we saw in that clip. It was kind of like his approach towards the guy, his Chef Boyardee. Prior to that particular clip, it was like he was just being mean and nasty, and he was condemning the boy for not knowing certain things, and so it was just kind of like. But then he flipped it because he saw how much the boy went through in order to give him that, and clearly the boy was intimidated by him, and he said basically that he would help him, and so it was kind of like he's redeemable. Truman is redeemable. So I was left hopeful about his character.
I'm looking forward to what happens in these next few episodes as it pertains to Mr. Capote, because I don't know. It could go either way. Quite a barometer.
Let's hope for redemption, and then let's see what actually happens.
So until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to share. Leave your comments down below. See y'all.